Do you ever just lie awake at night plagued by all those cringe-worthy memories of your younger self? You can't help but think, if only there was some way you could go back and undo all those embarrassing moments. I suppose you could try and accept these as part of your past and grow as a person, but that's unlikely. No, the only reasonable answer is to go back in time and murder your younger self. However, as you might expect, that's slightly easier said than done. First, we must ask a few questions, like, what even is time travel? Or, is murder really the best solution here? In his essay, The Paradoxes of Time Travel, David Lewis attempted to define time travel, specifically by differentiating between personal time and external time. Personal time is the time that you have personally experienced. So if you had a wristwatch on you while travelling through time, that would measure your personal time. In contrast to this, external time is time in a more objective sense. There are some problems with this definition of time. Einstein's theory of relativity somewhat destroyed the idea that there is such thing as objective time. Regardless, this means that some of the things that move you through time aren't actually considered time travel. Things like being in a coma, changing time zones, cryogenic freezing, and remembering the past don't actually count as forms of time travel. While time dilation doesn't fit perfectly into Lewis's definition, we will also be ruling this out as a form of time travel. Okay, now that we've established what time travel is, we can look at the possibility of murdering a younger, spottier, more embarrassing version of yourself. However, this comes with its own complications. You murdering the teenage version of yourself would risk creating a causal loop. A causal loop is where there is a series of causally connected events where the last event of the series causes the first event. So, you killing your teenage self would prevent you from growing up and deciding to murder your teenage self, which would mean that you never get murdered, which would mean that you never grow up to become a self-hating murderer, and so on and so forth. The possibility of these causal loops of self-creating events is often used as an argument against the existence of time travel, as it is allegedly impossible for things to create themselves. However, there are some theories on how to deal with these causal loops, the most famous of which comes from our old pal David Lewis. Lewis argues that time travel is possible, but changing the past is not. For Lewis, the past is set and therefore there is nothing we can do about it. So that means you can go back in time, but something will certainly go wrong in your extremely logical and well-adjusted murderous plan. Maybe just before you're about to strike the killing blow, you slip on an unfortunately placed banana peel, which sends you comically flying through the air. This might even remind you of that one occasion when you were a teenager and you saw a dishevelled lunatic run at you with a knife, only to slip on a banana peel. Oh wait. This would seem to suggest that there is no way that we can fulfill our objective. But there are some people who argue against Lewis's view of changing the past, which may offer us a possible way to achieve our goals. The first of which comes from Paul Horig, who argues that Lewis's model of time travel would lead to improbable coincidences, as no matter what you do, some circumstance will arise that will prevent you from changing the past. In our problem, that would mean that there would always be a banana peel that would prevent you from killing your younger self, no matter how many attempts you made. Horig argues that these unrelated circumstances always arising to prevent you from fulfilling your paradoxical goals is extremely unlikely. We just don't see independent events align so perfectly in the real world. This would suggest that the chances of Lewis's model of time travel being true is, while not completely impossible, certainly being extremely unlikely. Defenders of Lewis's model might argue that we don't generally see perfect correlations in the real world. That doesn't mean that we never shall. For example, imagine your old childhood road that used to be really busy, but has since been bypassed and is now extremely quiet. If you were to cross the road without looking in the present, it would have been a pretty coincidence if you were hit by a car. However, it wouldn't be a coincidence at all in the past. Circumstances can change so that uncaused correlations can become more or less common, but still probably best to look both ways. Then there are those that argue that our inability to affect the past is mysteriously unexplainable. While each individual event that prevents you from killing your past self is completely explainable, the perfect combination of all these events that will prevent any attempts to harm or even alter your past self, no matter how many attempts are made, is slightly less explainable. These events seem to ring-fence the past, creating zones where the time traveller cannot go or interfere. For example, let's say that you meticulously plan your attempt on your past self. You can go through all the security camera footage of your city on the day of your planned attack. You can guarantee that you, or anyone else that isn't from that time, aren't seen on any city street. This would seem to suggest that no matter how hard you or anyone else may try, you will always be stopped from walking through the roads of your old city on that specific day. It is as if there is a conspiracy to distract, detain, and defend against you and any accomplices you may have. This is inexplicable. If Lewis had argued that there are time cops, or time illuminati, that cause these perfect circumstances, that at least would give us a clear explanation as to why we can't enter the city. But instead, it is just a series of perfect circumstances, which just happens to align with your completely reasonable plan to attempt to murder your younger self. Defenders of the past is fixed model agree that a purely causal explanation isn't enough. However, they argue that Lewis offers a logical explanation of why you cannot kill your past self, the law of non-contradiction. This explains why you're guaranteed to fail, even if it doesn't practically stop you from murdering your younger self. Okay, let us assume that these arguments are enough to disprove Lewis's past is fixed model of time travel, which is a pretty big ask. Does that mean we can go back in time and actually do the dirty deed? Well, probably not, and not just because of the many moral and ethical implications. See, as the people who are arguing against Lewis's model of time travel aren't actually offering their own model of time travel, they're arguing against the concept of time travel itself. So, even if their arguments are correct, that doesn't mean that we can go back in time and kill teenage you. It isn't looking super likely that we can change the past, so ultimately the solution for these sleepless nights could just be a warm glass of milk, as opposed to a time-travelling murder spree.